I think CROs have an important part to play in adopting innovation. I'm Jamie Macdonald. I'm the CEO at INC Research based in Raleigh, North Carolina. We're a 5,200 person, therapeutically focused global CRO, conducting clinical trials in over 60 countries. I think we're seeing a lot of progress in the therapeutic interventions. I think particularly in oncology, I think the diagnostics and understanding of patients and their genetics and disease progression has improved so much that I think it's helping on the discovery side. We're understanding mechanisms of action and disease progression, and therefore able to develop some new therapies at an early stage and really bring those into patients in the clinic and clinical trials. So really good progress on the oncology side. Maybe not as curative as we would like, but certainly progress in terms of suppressing disease progression and allowing patients better quality of life. I think we're also seeing a lot of progress on the CNS side. So if you think of the central nervous system being in three parts, you have psychiatry, you have neurology, you have pain. I think there's a huge burden on society in terms of some of the mental health diseases, but also in some of the neurological degenerative diseases, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. And I think that's really focused the pharmaceutical industry's attention on bringing new therapies into market in those areas. And again, I think we've seen nice molecules come through, unfortunately not as many in late stage development as we would like, and partly because I think the disease is less well understood, so the mechanisms of action are different. And to be honest, the workings of the brain are still a little bit of a mystery even to the best scientists in the world. And there's maybe a more try and fail approach to therapeutic intervention. But I think there's definitely a willingness for the industry to come up with solutions to that unmet need and that huge cost to society and individuals and their caregivers. I think experience and expertise at the therapeutic level is critically important because disease is becoming more complex. We're seeing specialization at the physician level, really down to subtherapies. And therefore, in order to interact with those physicians, who are the key conductors of clinical research, they are the people that are implementing the protocol. They are working with the patients to take them through informed consent, participation, and continuity in clinical trials, that you have to have people on the CRO side that can work with the clinical investigators, but at the same time also understand the science from a clinical development standpoint in order to get sponsor programs to definitive outcomes. Ideally, hopefully to approval, but also to decisions maybe to suspend development on products that aren't safe or aren't efficacious. When we look at innovation in the industry, I think it falls into two main buckets. One is on the technology side, and better use of technology to align to process, to find efficiency and effectiveness in the conduct of clinical trials. Clinical trials take way too long, they cost too much, and there are lots of manual processes. So I think the technology alignment to help streamline those processes, reduce manual intervention, and lower the total cost and timelines, I think is critically important. The second piece on innovation that's critically important is the analytics. So how do you use data? How do you make better decisions from data in terms of determining the countries you want to go to, the sites you want to go to, and then managing the conduct of clinical trials throughout long, complex processes that have lots of variables, but ultimately, hopefully getting you to those right decisions at the end of what is a long and expensive process. So the analytics, we've seen much better tools come into not just the CRO space, but the sponsor side as well, that allow us to better utilize the data that we have, convert it into meaningful information, and put it in the hands of people that can make well-informed decisions based on that information. In terms of disruptive innovation, we have a heavily regulated industry, and we have a lot of people who are very compliant in terms of their nature. So we're not the software industry, we are a highly regulated, compliant, and almost obsessive-compulsive industry. But at the same time, we've got a lot of people who are looking at the use of tools like mobile health, the use of technology, the use of smartphones to better ensure patient compliance with either the taking of their medication, the attending appointments, filling in their patient diaries. It's not massively disruptive in the way that our our brethren would think in the technology industry, but it's certainly progression from where we have been in the past. I think that is quite exciting. And there is other work going on in organizations like Transcelerate, who are starting to look at new ways of conducting clinical trials in a pre-competitive space. So maybe sharing of best practices across entities that would otherwise be competitive, but now they're realizing that they can work together, they can improve the landscape for clinical development without being disadvantaged competitively, yet help the whole industry find better ways of doing business. So risk-based monitoring is one of the initiatives from Transcelerate is definitely a step forward. I think CROs have an important part to play in adopting innovation. I think CROs, particularly the larger ones, are seeing more and more of the clinical trial volume, and therefore they have the experience base to understand how to improve process, technology, analytics, and then really work in collaboration with their sponsors in order to bring that back in as new best practices for conducting clinical trials. And we see more sponsor companies working with CROs in a much more collaborative fashion, sharing databases about investigator performance, really having a collaborative process in protocol design, using some of the new tools that are out there to help streamline some of those processes. So I think CROs have an important role, but it's becoming more of a collaborative role with sponsors, regulators, and other stakeholders. From an INC perspective, we are one of the major sponsors of partnerships in clinical trials. We're happy to attend. It's an opportunity for us not just to meet with sponsor companies who we meet on a regular basis anyway, but actually we're meeting with some of our colleagues on the vendor side, on the technology side, on the patient advocacy side. So really looking at some of the areas that are of most interest to us as we look at how to be more efficient and more effective. It actually brings in many of the other stakeholders that we might not otherwise spend time with. And we've really set aside time over the 3 or 4 days of partnerships to really integrate with some of our other partners who are basically helping to improve the way that clinical trials are conducted, the quality of clinical trials, and really sort of trying to advance the industry. I know that's an auspicious goal, but you're never going to do that unless you actually collaborate with the people who are stakeholders.